Good evening, all, and welcome back to Dark Fears. Tonight, we step into the forgotten corners of Canada, where long, desolate highways stretch across endless wilderness, and isolated truck stops sit under flickering lights, places where help does not reach and silence feels alive. Hidden within these lonely roads are 7 of the most disturbing horror stories ever told by those who dared to stop. If you are new here, make sure to subscribe to Dark Fears for daily horror content that will keep you up at night. Hit that notification bell so you never miss when the darkness calls. Now, let us step into the shadows of Canada, where civilization ends and terror begins. My name is Daniel Reeves, and this happened when I was driving long-haul routes across Canada during the winter of 2018. I had been on the road for nearly 12 hours straight, hauling frozen goods through stretches of highway so empty it felt like the world had been abandoned. That night, exhaustion hit me harder than usual. My GPS showed the nearest truck stop about 40 miles ahead. Just one last push, I told myself. The road was swallowed in darkness, my headlights barely cutting through the falling snow. When I finally saw the sign, it flickered weakly, like it was struggling to stay alive. The truck stop looked wrong. Only 2 trucks were parked there, both covered in a thin layer of snow like they hadn't moved in hours. Still, I needed rest. As I pulled in, my radio suddenly cut to static. Not unusual, but then, through the crackling noise, I heard something faint. A voice. It whispered my name. At first, I thought it was just my mind playing tricks on me. Long hours on the road can mess with your head, especially in isolation like that. I turned the radio off completely, trying to shake the uneasy feeling crawling up my spine. The engine idled as I stepped out of the truck, boots crunching against the icy ground. The air was unnaturally still. No wind, no distant highway noise, just silence. Too much silence. I glanced at the other trucks. One of them had its door slightly open, swaying just enough to catch my attention. That wasn't normal. Drivers don't just leave their doors open in freezing temperatures. "Hello?" I called out, my voice echoing awkwardly in the empty lot. No response. Then I heard it again. This time, not from the radio, from behind me. "Daniel." The voice was clearer now, closer. And I swear, it didn't sound human. I spun around so fast, I nearly slipped on the ice. My heart slammed against my ribs as I scanned the empty lot behind me. There was no one there. Just the faint hum of my truck engine and the distant creak of metals shifting in the cold. I told myself to calm down. There had to be an explanation. Maybe another driver was messing with me. Maybe someone was inside the building. But something didn't feel right. The open truck door I'd noticed earlier was now completely still. No movement at all. And the way it sat there, slightly ajar, facing me, it felt intentional, like it was waiting. Against my better judgment, I walked toward it. Each step felt heavier than the last, like something inside me was begging me to turn back. When I reached the truck, I hesitated. My breath fogged the air as I slowly leaned forward and peered inside. The cabin was empty, but the driver's seat was still warm. I pulled back immediately, a chill running deeper than the cold air itself. There was no way that truck had been sitting there for hours if the seat was still warm. Someone had been there. Recently. "Hello?" I called again. Louder this time, my voice cracking slightly. Still nothing. That's when I noticed something on the inside of the windshield. At first, it looked like frost forming from the cold, but then I realized it wasn't random. It was shaped. Letters. Slowly, almost unwillingly, I leaned closer to read it. Daniel, my name, written from the inside. I stumbled back, nearly falling as panic surged through me. There was no one in that truck. I had just checked. There was nowhere for anyone to hide, and yet something had been sitting there, watching me. Then, from the direction of the main building, the lights flickered violently, and the front door creaked open on its own. I stood frozen, staring at the truck stop building as the door slowly swung wider, groaning like it hadn't been opened in years. Every instinct told me to get back into my truck and drive. Forget the rest. Forget the fatigue, just leave. But something else pulled at me. A strange curiosity. Or maybe it was fear of not knowing what was happening. My legs moved before I could fully decide, carrying me across the icy lot toward the entrance. Each step felt like I was walking deeper into something I didn't understand. The flickering lights above the door buzzed loudly, casting broken shadows that shifted unnaturally across the snow. As I reached the doorway, I noticed deep scratch marks along the metal frame. Long, uneven grooves, like something had tried to claw its way out or in. I hesitated at the threshold, my breath catching in my throat. Then, from somewhere inside the dark building, I heard movement. Slow, heavy, and getting closer. I should have run. I know that now. But in that moment, something inside me refused to turn away. I took a slow step inside, the door creaking behind me as it drifted partially shut. The warmth hit me first, but it wasn't comforting. It felt stale, trapped, like the air hadn't moved in days. The interior was dimly lit. Half the lights were dead, leaving large parts of the room swallowed in darkness. Shelves stood half-stocked, some items knocked over as if someone had left in a hurry. "Hello?" I called again, my voice quieter now, almost afraid of being heard. No answer. Then I saw the counter. Behind it, a chair sat slightly pushed back. On the surface, there was a steaming cup of coffee. Fresh, still hot. I slowly stepped closer, my heart pounding louder with every second. That's when the chair moved, just an inch, on its own. I froze where I stood. My eyes locked onto that chair as it scraped softly against the floor. The sound echoed unnaturally loud in the silence, like it was happening inside my head rather than in the room. Every part of me screamed to move, to run. But my body wouldn't listen. The chair shifted again, just slightly. Then it stopped. For a moment, everything went still. The flickering lights above buzzed weakly, casting shadows that stretched and twisted along the walls. My breathing became the only sound I could hear, sharp and uneven. And then, a new sound joined it. Breathing, not mine. It came from behind the counter. Slow, deep, wet, like something struggling to breathe properly. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to lean slightly to the side, trying to see what was hidden back there. That's when I noticed the shadow first. It didn't match anything in the room, and it was moving. On its own. My heart pounded so hard it felt like it might give me away. I took a slow step backward, careful not to make a sound. But the floor beneath my boot let out a faint creak. The breathing stopped instantly. Silence slammed into the room again. Then, from behind the counter, something shifted. I didn't wait to see what it was. I turned and bolted for the door, adrenaline finally breaking whatever had been holding me in place. My hand slammed against the handle, but it wouldn't move. Locked. "No, no, no," I muttered, yanking harder, panic flooding every thought. I had just come through that door. It wasn't locked. Behind me, I heard it. Movement. Faster now. Something dragging itself across the floor, getting closer. I could feel it before I saw it, that overwhelming sense of being watched, hunted. Slowly, against my better judgment, I turned my head just enough to look back, and what I saw was not human. At first, my mind refused to process what I was seeing. It was like my brain tried to protect me by distorting it into something familiar. But there was nothing familiar about it. The thing dragging itself across the floor had limbs that bent the wrong way, joints twisting unnaturally as it pulled its body forward. Its skin, if that's what it was, looked pale and stretched, clinging tightly to a frame that seemed too thin to support it. But it was the face that broke me. Or what should have been a face. It had no clear features, just a smooth, shifting surface, except for where the mouth should be. That part moved, slowly, stretching wider as it let out a wet, rasping breath. And then it spoke. Daniel. My name again. But this time, it sounded wrong. Like multiple voices trying to speak through the same broken throat. That's when the door behind me suddenly unlocked with a sharp click. I didn't hesitate. The second I heard that click, I threw the door open and stumbled out into the freezing night air. I didn't look back. I couldn't. Every instinct told me that if I did, it would be the last thing I ever saw. I ran across the lot, slipping on the ice, barely catching myself before reaching my truck. My hands shook so badly, I nearly dropped the keys. But somehow, I managed to start the engine. As the truck roared to life, I risked one glance toward the building. The door was wide open, and standing inside, just beyond the light, was a silhouette, watching me. It didn't move, it didn't chase, it just stood there. I drove the rest of the night without stopping, didn't sleep, didn't even slow down. When I reported the location later, they told me that truck stop had been abandoned for over 10 years, and no one had worked there since the disappearances began. My name is Kevin Marshall, and this happened during a winter route I was running through northern Canada in late 2020. I'd been driving solo for years, so long stretches of empty highway never really bothered me. In fact, I preferred them. Less traffic, less noise, just me, the road, and the hum of the engine. That night, though, something felt off. It started around 2:30 a.m., somewhere between two truck stops that were over 100 miles apart. My GPS had lost signal about 20 minutes earlier, leaving me completely reliant on memory and road signs that were getting harder to see through the snowfall. I hadn't seen another vehicle in over an hour. Not a single pair of headlights. Nothing. Then I noticed something strange. My passenger seat was no longer empty. At first, I thought it was just a trick of the light, shadows shifting as my headlights bounced off the snow. But when I glanced again, my stomach dropped. Something was sitting there, and it was facing me. I jerked my head fully toward the passenger seat, my breath catching in my throat. There was nothing there. The seat was empty again. I let out a shaky laugh, trying to convince myself it was just exhaustion messing with me. 12 hours on the road, low visibility, isolation. It was the perfect recipe for hallucinations. I'd heard stories from other drivers before. Still, it felt too real. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel and focused on the road ahead. The snowfall had started getting heavier, thick flakes slamming against the windshield, forcing me to slow down. The wipers struggled to keep up, creating brief moments where my vision blurred completely. That's when I heard it. A soft sound right beside me, like fabric shifting. Slowly, very slowly, I turned my head again. This time the seat wasn't empty. The figure was back. Closer now, and I could see its outline clearly. Sitting upright, perfectly still, staring straight at me. I forced my eyes back onto the road, my entire body tensing as if looking at it directly would somehow make it worse. My heart was pounding so loudly I could barely hear anything else. But I knew it was still there beside me. I told myself not to look again, but that only made it harder. The feeling of being watched grew stronger with every second, like something was studying me, learning me. My hands tightened around the wheel until my knuckles turned white. I could feel the presence now, not just see it. The air inside the cabin felt heavier, colder, like the heater had suddenly stopped working. Then, slowly, I felt it move. Not a sudden shift, not a jerk, just a subtle lean, closer to me. My breath hitched as something brushed lightly against my arm. Not enough to hurt, but enough to feel unmistakably real. And in that moment, I realized something horrifying. Whatever was sitting there was no longer just an illusion. I couldn't take it anymore. I slammed my foot on the brakes, the truck skidding slightly on the icy road before coming to a rough stop. The sudden silence was deafening. I turned my head slowly, forcing myself to face whatever was sitting beside me. For a split second, there was nothing. Then it appeared again. But this time, it wasn't just a shadow. It had shape, form, details. A man. At least, that's what it wanted to look like. Its head was tilted slightly toward me, eyes sunken too deep into its face, skin pale and stretched tight, like it didn't quite fit. Its lips parted slowly, revealing a dark, unnatural emptiness inside its mouth. And then it smiled. Not a normal smile. Something wide. Too wide. As if it had learned the expression, but didn't understand it. "Long drive," it whispered. Its voice sounded like it was coming from somewhere deep underground. I couldn't speak. My throat felt completely locked, like even trying to form words would somehow make this more real. I just stared at it, at him, sitting there like he belonged in that seat. The thing's eyes didn't blink, not once. They just stayed fixed on me, uncomfortably wide, like it was afraid to miss even the smallest reaction. "Yeah," I finally managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. "Long drive." I don't know why I responded. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was fear. For a moment, it didn't react. Then its smile widened. Slowly, unnaturally, stretching further than any human face should allow. The corners of its mouth pulled back too far, revealing darkness inside like there was nothing behind it at all. "Good," it said. That one word sent a chill straight through my chest. Because it didn't sound pleased. It sounded hungry. And then, without warning, it lifted its hand and pointed toward the road ahead. I followed its gesture instinctively, my eyes snapping back to the road ahead. At first, I didn't see anything. Just the same endless stretch of snow-covered asphalt disappearing into darkness. Then, something moved. Far ahead, barely visible through the snowfall, a shape stood in the middle of the road. A person, at least it looked like one. My stomach dropped as I leaned forward slightly, trying to get a better view. The figure wasn't waving for help. It wasn't moving at all. It just stood there, perfectly still, directly in my path. "No," I muttered under my breath. No. I glanced back at the thing beside me. It was still smiling, still pointing. "Stop," it whispered. That single word hit harder than anything else. Not because of what it said, but because of how it said it. Like it wasn't asking. It was expecting me to obey. And somehow, my foot began to press the brake on its own. I fought against it with everything I had. My foot trembled on the brake pedal, muscles tightening as I tried to pull back control, but it felt like something else was guiding me. Something stronger than my own will. The truck began to slow. "No," I whispered, panic rising in my chest. "No, I'm not stopping." Beside me, the thing didn't move, but I could feel its attention sharpen, like it was focusing entirely on me now. The temperature inside the cabin dropped even further, my breath turning visible in the air. "Stop," it repeated, its voice lower this time, heavier. The figure on the road was getting closer now, still unmoving, still waiting. And then I noticed something that made my blood run cold. It wasn't facing me. It was turned slightly, as if it was already looking at the passenger seat, like it knew. Something was already inside my truck. Something inside me snapped. With a surge of adrenaline, I slammed my foot down, not on the brake, but on the accelerator. The engine roared violently as the truck lurched forward, tires struggling for grip before finally catching the road. "I'm not stopping," I shouted, my voice breaking. The thing beside me didn't react immediately. For a brief second, its smile faltered. Just a little. Then it slowly turned its head toward me. That was the first time I realized. Its body hadn't moved this entire time, only its head. And now it was turning further than it should have been able to. Further, until I heard a faint cracking sound. My stomach twisted as its face came into full view again, that same stretched smile returning, but wider now. Angry. "Wrong choice," it whispered. I barely had time to react before the figure in the road suddenly moved. Fast, too fast, straight toward my truck. The figure in the road didn't just stand there anymore. It lunged. I screamed as the truck swerved instinctively, snow spraying across the asphalt. My hands gripped the wheel like my life depended on it. Because it did. The thing in the passenger seat leaned closer, its presence pressing into my mind like an invisible weight. I forced myself to glance at it for just a second. Its eyes, black, empty, endless, boring into me. Its smile had grown impossibly wide, lips stretching across its face in a way no human could survive. "Faster," it hissed, voice layered with something unholy, like a dozen whispers overlapping each other. My foot slammed harder on the accelerator. The truck roared forward, tires struggling for traction on the icy road. The figure on the highway shrieked, or maybe it was laughing. The sound echoed unnaturally, ricocheting off the trees lining the empty road. I didn't dare look again. I just drove. And I prayed. I drove until the snow thinned and faint lights of a small town appeared in the distance. The creature in the passenger seat was gone. Just like that. No trace. Not a single movement. The seat was empty again. I pulled into a lit parking lot, hands shaking so violently I could barely turn off the ignition. My chest heaved, trying to catch my breath as the reality of what had just happened sank in. The highway behind me was empty. The figure in the road? Gone. The night. Silent. I didn't stop to question it. I didn't try to look back. I walked into the diner, trying to shake off the icy fear clinging to me. But deep down, I knew it hadn't left me. Not really. Years later, I still drive those highways. But I never drive alone at night. And sometimes, just sometimes, I see a flash of that pale, smiling face in the passenger seat of my rearview mirror. Always watching, always waiting. My name is Laura Jennings, and this happened during a solo trip across Canada in the dead of winter. I had taken a detour to avoid road closures, which led me down a long, forested stretch of highway. Darkness surrounded me completely. There were no streetlights, no passing vehicles, just endless trees pressing close on either side. By the time I saw the faint glow of a gas station up ahead, relief washed over me. Finally, a chance to stretch my legs, grab a coffee, maybe even use the restroom. The lot was tiny, almost hidden among the trees. The station itself was old, paint peeling, a single flickering light above the door. Only one car was parked there, its engine running. I shook off the uneasy feelings settling in my stomach. Long drives could play tricks on the mind. I told myself it was just isolation. And yet, the second I stepped out of the car, the hairs on my arms stood straight. Something was watching. I walked toward the gas station slowly, each step crunching on the icy ground. The cold air felt heavier than usual, almost suffocating. The building looked abandoned, yet the light above the door flickered as if it had power. I approached the front door and noticed it was slightly ajar, swinging just enough to creak in the wind. I hesitated. Normally, I'd have gone straight inside, but something about the silence, too complete, too perfect, made me pause. That's when I saw him. A man standing just inside, partially hidden by the shadows behind the counter. His face was impossible to read. He was tall and still, like a statue. But I could feel his gaze, piercing, unblinking. I forced myself to speak. "Hello, is anyone here?" No response. Just the faint creak of the swinging door behind me, even though I hadn't moved it. And then the man slowly lifted his head and smiled. I froze where I stood, my hands instinctively clutching my coat tighter around me. The man didn't move from behind the counter. He just stared, perfectly still, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. My stomach twisted. Something about him was wrong. I took a cautious step forward. The wooden floorboards inside groaned under my weight. Each sound seemed magnified in the oppressive silence, echoing off the walls like a warning. "Hi, I just need gas," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Still nothing. I scanned the interior quickly. Shelves were mostly empty, a few cans of soda covered in dust, and a small coffee machine that hadn't been used in years. Yet the faint smell of freshly brewed coffee lingered in the air. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed movement behind one of the shelves. Slow, deliberate. Something, or someone, was shifting, watching me. And my blood ran cold when the man's smile widened, stretching further than humanly possible. I swallowed hard, my throat dry as sandpaper. Every instinct screamed at me to leave, but my feet felt like they were glued to the floor. Then the man moved. Not quickly, not violently. Just a slow, deliberate step forward, his gaze never leaving me. The floor creaked under him, echoing in the small space. I backed up slightly, nearly tripping over a discarded box. My eyes darted to the door behind me, open just enough to let the cold wind sweep in. A perfect escape, yet my body refused to move toward it. "Do you want something?" I asked, my voice trembling. The smile didn't falter. Then I noticed his hands, pale, long fingers. They were wrapped around something small, shiny, and metallic, a key. He tilted his head toward me and whispered, almost playfully, "Time to come inside." And the sound of laughter followed, low and hollow, echoing unnaturally through the empty station. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might break through my chest. I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't obey. The man didn't rush me. He just stood there, swaying slightly, as if testing me. Every step he took toward me seemed to stretch time itself. I noticed the key in his hand, gleaming under the flickering light. A door behind the counter, It hadn't caught my attention before. Creaked open just enough to show a dark hallway beyond. My gut twisted. I knew instinctively that whatever lay down there was not human. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his voice low and rasping, each word dripping with something malicious. I stepped back, my boots scraping the icy floor outside the station. He tilted his head, that horrific smile still in place. "Come inside, Laura," he whispered. The sound of my own name, spoken by that voice, sent a shiver straight down my spine. I realized then, this wasn't just a station in the woods. It was a trap. I stumbled backward, nearly losing my balance on the icy floor outside. My breaths came in sharp, visible bursts, each one a reminder of the freezing night around me. My eyes never left him. He didn't move quickly, just a slow, deliberate step. I forced myself to speak, hoping to buy some time. I just need gas, that's all. I can pay. Please." His smile didn't fade. In fact, it widened. "Pay," he whispered, the word dragging unnaturally through the air. "You've already paid." The moment you stopped, a cold realization hit me. This wasn't just a man. This wasn't just a station. Something ancient, something patient had been waiting for me, waiting for all who dared enter this place. I turned and ran, boots slipping on the ice, my arms flailing as I reached my car. The engine roared to life, and I didn't look back. Except in the rearview mirror, the lights of the station seemed brighter than they should be, as if watching me leave. I drove blindly down the forest road, snow crunching beneath my tires, trying to put as much distance between me and that cursed gas station as possible. Every instinct told me to call the authorities, but there was no signal. The trees pressed close on either side, black silhouettes against the drifting snow, and my heart refused to slow. Then, in the rearview mirror, I saw it. Not the man, but the station. It was brighter than before, unnaturally bright, almost glowing despite the night and snow. And inside the flickering light, I could see him, smiling, pointing directly at me. Panic surged through me. My foot pressed harder on the gas pedal. The forest blurred as the truck roared forward. And yet, no matter how fast I drove, the station stayed in my mirror. It didn't shrink. It didn't fade. It followed. And I realized, with a shudder, that the road behind me was no longer just road. It had become part of the trap. I tried everything. Turning off the road, slowing down, even stopping completely. But each time I risked a glance in the mirror, the station remained, closer than it should be. It wasn't just following me. It was watching. My mind raced. Every logical thought was crushed under the weight of fear. This shouldn't be possible. Buildings don't move. People don't vanish into the night and then appear again. And yet, there it was. I could see him clearly now, tall and pale, smiling that impossible wide smile, hands outstretched as if inviting me back inside. Somewhere deep in my chest, my instincts screamed to fight. But there was no way to fight something like this. It wasn't human. It was patient. And it had already decided I wasn't leaving. I slammed my eyes shut, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles cracked. When I opened them again, the station was gone, but the smile stayed in my mind. I kept driving, heart hammering, snowstorm blurring the edges of the road. Every tree looked like it might hide him. Every shadow seemed to stretch unnaturally. The highway curved, dipped, then straightened. But no matter how far I went, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was inside the truck with me. I dared a glance at the passenger seat. Empty. For now. But the smell. That metallic, cold smell lingered, like the air had been tainted. My hands trembled on the wheel as memories of his smile, his key, and the way he had whispered my name flooded my mind. The road ahead opened to a faint glow, lights of a proper town. But the comfort was hollow. I knew somehow it wasn't over. Not really. Every instinct screamed that the moment I stopped, the station, or him, would return. And I understood then that some places don't let go of you. They wait. Forever. I reached the town, shaking and exhausted. But I couldn't stop completely. Every corner I passed, every shadowed alley, I half expected to see the station glowing, the man waiting. I pulled into a well-lit diner, hands trembling as I shut off the engine. No one noticed my wild eyes, my pale face, or the fact that I was hyperventilating. I sat in the corner, trying to convince myself I had imagined it all. Hours passed. Night turned toward dawn, and I finally dared to look outside. The highway was empty. The snow had settled. Peace, at last. But I couldn't shake the image from my mind, that smile, that key. Years later, I still drive those northern roads cautiously. And sometimes, when the wind blows just right or headlights catch a shadow on the side of the road, I swear I feel him, watching, waiting, patient as ever. Because some horrors don't stay behind. They follow. My name is Mark Reynolds, and this happened to me during a long-haul delivery through the Canadian prairies in late 2019. It was the dead of winter, and the highway stretched endlessly, flat and empty, with nothing but ice, snow, and distant tree lines for miles. I was exhausted, my eyelids heavy, when I saw the faint orange glow of a truck stop. Relief flooded me. I needed fuel, a hot coffee, and maybe just a moment to breathe. The lot was empty, apart from a few parked rigs, their engines silent. The building itself was old, windows grimy, lights flickering. A perfect picture of abandonment. Yet the door stood wide open, creaking in the wind. I stepped inside, expecting maybe a lone attendant or a vending machine to provide some comfort. Instead, silence. Complete, suffocating silence. It felt wrong, too quiet. And the longer I stood there, the more I realized something or someone was watching me. I moved cautiously across the icy floor toward the counter. My boots echoed against the bare tiles, each sound magnified in the oppressive silence. No vending machines, no signs of life. Just the building itself, as if it were holding its breath. Then I saw it. A figure. Standing at the edge of the shadows, near the back door. Tall, thin, and impossibly still. Its face was obscured by the darkness, but I could feel his gaze fixated on me. Every instinct screamed to run, but my exhaustion and curiosity anchored me in place. I called out, my voice cracking slightly. "Hello? Anyone here?" No response. Only the faint creak of the back door swinging open by itself. A cold draft swept through the building, and with it, the unmistakable feeling that I was no longer alone. And in that instant, I knew I had stepped into something that had been waiting. I swallowed hard, my pulse hammering in my ears as I edged closer to the shadows. Each step felt heavier than the last, like the air itself was resisting me. The figure didn't move. It didn't breathe. It simply watched. A flicker of movement caught my eye. A chair toppled over in the corner, though I hadn't touched it. My hands shook as I scanned the room, looking for another exit, another sign that this was just an empty building. Then I noticed the floorboards behind the counter. They were scratched, scuffed, as though something or someone had been pacing there for hours, maybe days. My stomach churned. The thought that this place had been occupied, despite appearing abandoned, made my skin crawl. I tried to steady my breathing, forcing myself to speak. I just need some coffee, that's all. The silence stretched, oppressive and thick, until a soft, deliberate sound came from the shadows. A footstep, moving toward me. I froze, every muscle locked, unable to move as the figure's shadow grew longer with each step it took. I could hear the soft scraping of its boots against the floor, a slow rhythm that made my chest tighten. "Hello?" I whispered, voice trembling. No answer. The figure stopped abruptly, just a few feet away. Its face remained hidden, but I could feel its attention, piercing and unrelenting. The room felt smaller suddenly, walls pressing in, air thick with the scent of something cold and metallic. Then it tilted its head. A faint, unnatural smile spread across its face, just visible from the corner of my eye. I realized, too late, that it wasn't just watching me. It was expecting me. I stumbled back, almost tripping over a crate. My foot caught, sending me sprawling across the icy floor, my heart racing. The figure didn't move. It didn't need to. It already had me trapped. I scrambled to my feet, hands trembling as I searched desperately for the door. The back exit swung slowly, as if pushed by some invisible force. My heart raced, and my breaths came in sharp, uneven gasps. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but I couldn't move fast enough. The figure stepped closer, slow and deliberate, boots scraping against the floorboards with a chilling rhythm. Its smile had grown wider, unnatural, stretching across a face that didn't belong to any human. The lights flickered violently above, casting distorted shadows that danced across the walls, making the figure appear taller, more twisted. I tried to speak, my voice barely a whisper. I'm leaving. I don't want any trouble." The figure didn't respond. It just tilted its head, that grotesque grin never fading. A low, hollow chuckle echoed from the shadows. And then I realized the worst part. It knew I was afraid, and it enjoyed it. I lunged for the back door, slipping on the icy floor as my adrenaline surged. My fingers gripped the cold metal handle, twisting it desperately. The door creaked open just enough to let in the freezing night air. I bolted outside, the snow crunching beneath my boots, lungs burning with every desperate breath. Behind me, I thought I heard footsteps, soft but deliberate, following me across the icy lot. I didn't dare look back. My car sat a short distance away, engine still running, a beacon of fleeting safety. I jumped inside, slammed the door, and locked it. My hands shook so violently that it took several tries to put the key in the ignition. As the engine roared to life, I glanced once more at the truck stop. The building seemed normal, empty, quiet. But the memory of that unnatural smile lingered in my mind. And I knew deep down, the silence itself had been watching me all along. I finally hit the highway, trying to put as much distance as possible between me and that cursed truck stop. Snow swirled around my headlights, blurring the road ahead. My hands gripped the wheel so tightly, my knuckles ached. For a moment, I thought I was safe. The stop was behind me. The silence of the prairie felt almost normal again. Then I saw it in the rearview mirror. Not the building. Not exactly. Something else. A dark silhouette standing where the lot should have been. Impossibly tall, motionless, yet somehow moving closer. My stomach dropped as I realized its eyes, faintly glowing, were fixed on me. Panic surged, and I slammed the accelerator. Tires spun on icy patches, snow spraying in every direction. But the shape didn't disappear. It didn't follow the road. It followed me. And every mile I drove, that faint, hollow outline lingered in the mirror, patient and unyielding, like it had all the time in the world. I tried everything, slowing, swerving, even stopping. But each time I dared to glance at the mirror, the figure remained. Not running, not chasing, just following. Its posture was impossibly rigid, its head tilting unnaturally, gaze locked on me. My heart pounded, thoughts racing. Logic failed. Buildings don't walk. Shadows don't follow miles behind. I forced myself to look away, focusing on the headlights ahead. The silence inside the cab was suffocating, broken only by the wind scraping against the truck. Then I felt it. A cold weight pressing against the passenger seat. My skin crawled. My breath hitched. I dared a glance. Empty. But the air itself felt alive, charged with intent. I pressed harder on the accelerator. The town lights ahead offered a fragile hope of safety. But I knew, deep down, some things don't just let go. Some things wait, and some will follow forever. I reached the edge of the town, my hands shaking violently on the wheel. The warm lights of the small gas stations and diners ahead should have felt like safety, but my instinct screamed otherwise. Every shadow along the roadside, every shape in the snow seemed alive. Then I saw it again in the rearview mirror. Not the truck stop this time, but the figure. Standing in the distance along the highway, impossibly tall, motionless, yet somehow closer than before. My chest tightened as dread coiled around me like a vice. I realized with horror that it hadn't just been the building that was alive. The thing, whatever it was, had followed me, patient and unyielding, waiting for me to tire, to falter. Every logical thought had fled. Only fear remained, raw and suffocating. And I knew, as I gripped the wheel with trembling hands, that it was waiting for the moment I finally stopped. Some horrors never leave. I pulled into the first open diner I saw, my fingers numb from gripping the wheel, my mind still racing. I shut the engine off and sat in silence, waiting, listening, trying to convince myself that the figure had finally vanished. Hours passed. Snow continued to fall, lights flickered, and the night slowly gave way to dawn. I finally allowed myself a long, trembling breath. Yet even as I tried to tell myself it was over, I knew better. The image of that silent, smiling figure haunted my mind. The frozen truck stop, the dark shadows, the hollow laugh, all of it stayed with me. Years later, I still drive the highways, especially at night, with a constant unease, always glancing at the passenger seat. Because some places, some things, they don't just disappear. They wait, and they follow. Forever. My name is Kevin Thompson, and this happened to me on a cross-country delivery route through the remote forests of Canada. It was nearing midnight, and the highway stretched endlessly in every direction, swallowed by darkness. My truck hummed steadily along the asphalt, but exhaustion was clawing at me. I needed a break, a safe place to rest. That's when I spotted the rest stop, or at least what appeared to be a rest stop. It sat hidden among the tall pines, dim lights flickering weakly, almost hesitant to illuminate the lot. The structure looked like it hadn't been maintained in decades, paint peeling, windows dark and opaque with grime. I parked my rig cautiously, the silence around me suffocating. Not a sound except for the whisper of the wind through the trees and the faint groan of my tires on ice. I stepped out, expecting nothing more than a chance to stretch my legs and grab some coffee. But I quickly realized that this place was not empty. I approached the building cautiously, boots crunching on the icy ground. The air was unnaturally still, heavy with a cold that didn't feel like normal winter air. Every instinct screamed at me to turn back, but fatigue and the need to rest pressed me forward. Then I saw movement. A figure crouched in the shadows near the entrance. It was too dark to make out details, but it was clearly human-shaped, hunched unnaturally, like it was waiting. My stomach sank. I called out, trying to sound confident. "Hello? Anyone here?" No answer. The figure shifted, the sound of its movement dragging across the frozen ground. It wasn't walking. It glided, almost silently, and my chest tightened with the realization that this was not someone I wanted to meet. I instinctively stepped back, scanning the building. Windows dark, doors closed, but a faint shadow seemed to stretch from inside, reaching toward the dimly lit lot. I had a sinking feeling that I had stumbled into something much older and much darker than myself. I hesitated at the door, my fingers hovering over the handle. The wind whistled through the surrounding trees, carrying an unnatural silence that made my skin crawl. I knew somehow that once I stepped inside, there would be no turning back. Taking a deep breath, I pushed the door open. The hinges groaned, and the faint flicker of a broken fluorescent light illuminated a dusty lobby. Old vending machines stood empty, and the floor was coated with a thin layer of frost. It smelled of damp wood, rust, and something metallic that made my stomach turn. Then I noticed the shadows. They weren't fixed. They shifted unnaturally across the walls, stretching toward me. And there it was, the figure. Standing perfectly still near the far corner, tall and thin, face hidden in darkness, watching me with something I couldn't name. My pulse quickened, every nerve in my body screaming to run. But my legs were rooted to the icy floor, trapped in place. I tried to steady my breathing, telling myself it was just exhaustion, that the isolation had played tricks on my mind. But the cold, metallic smell grew stronger, filling my lungs, and the figure didn't move. It simply watched, patient and silent. I inched toward the counter, hoping for a phone or some sign of help. The floorboards creaked under my weight, the sound far too loud in the oppressive quiet. Every instinct screamed that the figure could strike at any moment. Then I heard it, a low, deliberate scraping sound behind me. Something was moving, slow and calculated. I froze, heart hammering. The figure's head tilted, a faint outline of a smile just visible. Not a friendly one, not human. And I realized that I was standing in the wrong place, at the wrong time, with no hope of leaving unscathed. This rest stop wasn't abandoned, it was alive. I backed away from the counter, every nerve on fire, my eyes fixed on the figure. Its posture didn't change. It didn't need to move. I felt its presence like a weight pressing against my chest, making it hard to breathe. A sudden sound made me flinch, a chair scraping across the floor behind me, though I hadn't touched it. The scraping grew louder, closer, deliberate. Something was moving in the shadows I hadn't noticed before. I stumbled toward the exit, trying to steady my shaking legs. My fingers gripped the door handle, but before I could open it, the figure tilted its head, the faint outline of a smile stretching wider than any human could manage. A cold chill ran down my spine. I realized it wasn't just watching me. It was studying me, learning my fear, savoring it. I finally yanked the door open and bolted into the freezing night, the wind slamming against me like a wall of ice. I ran across the icy lot, breath visible in the freezing air, my boots slipping with every frantic step. The building behind me seemed to exhale, almost alive, windows glowing faintly despite the dark. I glanced over my shoulder. The figure was at the doorway, impossibly still, yet somehow closer than it should have been. My heart leapt into my throat. I reached my truck, fumbling with the keys, shaking so violently I almost dropped them. The engine roared to life, and I slammed the truck into gear, tires spinning on icy asphalt as I barreled down the road. The rest stop disappeared behind me into the darkness, swallowed by trees and shadows. But the memory of the figure, the unnatural smile, and the scraping sound followed me. Even in the isolation of the empty highway, I felt it watching, waiting. Some places don't just let you leave. They mark you. I barreled down the highway, snow spraying from the tires, desperate to put distance between me and that cursed rest stop. The wind whipped through the cab, rattling the doors, but the road ahead seemed endless, dark and unforgiving. Then I caught a glimpse in the rearview mirror. The figure, not running, not chasing, just standing at the edge of the lot, impossibly tall, a shadow among shadows. Its head tilted, and that faint, unnatural smile seemed to pierce right through me. I pressed harder on the accelerator, the truck fishtailing over patches of ice, heart hammering. My mind raced, trying to find a rational explanation, but there was none. Somehow, it had marked me. Somehow, the rest stop wasn't just a building, it was alive, and it had chosen me. The highway ahead offered no comfort. Every mile, every turn, I felt its presence lingering, patient and relentless. I knew one thing with chilling certainty. It wasn't done with me. I tried everything, glancing away, focusing on the road, even muttering prayers under my breath. But the presence never left. The air inside the cab felt thick, almost solid, like I was being watched from every direction. Then I noticed the passenger seat, empty and yet cold. An unnatural cold that didn't belong to the winter night outside. I shivered, realizing the figure didn't need to be visible to terrify me. Its influence was here, in the very air around me. Snowflakes streaked past the windshield as I accelerated, blinding me with the reflection of my headlights. Every tree along the roadside seemed to stretch unnaturally, shadows bending toward me, carrying the weight of that silent observer. The highway curved ahead, town lights faintly visible on the horizon, offering fragile hope. But I knew, deep in my bones, that the rest stop, and whatever lingered there, was patient. And patient things never forget. And patient things never forgive. The town lights grew closer, but my nerves refused to calm. Every shadow along the snowy highway seemed alive. Every gust of wind carried a whisper that my exhausted mind interpreted as laughter. I gripped the wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white, praying the figure had vanished back into the darkness of the lot. And then I saw it again, just beyond the tree line in the rearview mirror, standing perfectly still, impossibly tall, pale against the snow. Not moving, not chasing, just waiting. I realized with a sickening certainty that the rest stop hadn't just been a location. It had been a trap. The figure wasn't bound to the building, it was bound to me. Every mile I drove, the presence lingered, patient, watching, feeding on the terror it had planted in my mind. I slammed my foot on the accelerator, praying that the next town would be enough to lose it, though logic told me I might never escape its influence. Some things don't need to chase you. Some things only need to wait. I finally pulled into the lit parking lot of a small diner, hands shaking, heart pounding, snowflakes swirling around the truck. The building looked ordinary, safe. I shut off the engine and sat in silence, trying to convince myself that the figure had finally disappeared. Hours passed. Dawn began to break, painting the sky in pale shades of gray. I forced myself to glance at the rearview mirror. Empty. The highway stretched behind me, peaceful, snowy, normal. But the memory of the figure remained, that grotesque, patient smile, and the scraping sounds in the abandoned rest stop. I could feel the presence of the building itself, somehow alive, marking me, following me in memory, if not in flesh. Even now, I avoid isolated rest stops at night, especially in the remote forests of Canada, because some places aren't just abandoned. They watch, and they wait, forever. My name is Lucas Bennett, and I've been driving trucks across Canada for nearly a decade. But nothing in my experience prepared me for what happened one icy February night on a desolate stretch of highway. I had been driving for hours, fatigue pressing against my eyelids, when I saw a faint orange glow in the distance. A truck stop. The strange thing was, I knew this stretch of highway well. There had never been a truck stop here before. Yet the building stood there, lights flickering weakly, surrounded by snow-covered asphalt and dense forest. Its appearance felt impossible. I parked cautiously, every instinct warning me to keep moving, to ignore the eerie glow. But exhaustion and desperation pushed me forward. I stepped onto the icy lot, feeling the crunch beneath my boots, and noticed the complete absence of other vehicles. The silence was deafening. Not a single sound, except for the faint hum of the broken neon lights overhead. Something about this place was wrong. I approached the entrance cautiously. The door was slightly ajar, swaying gently in the icy wind. I called out, hoping to hear a friendly voice, maybe a late-night attendant. But the building responded only with silence. The windows were grimy and opaque, making it impossible to see inside. Yet I could feel the weight of being watched, as if something unseen was tracking my every movement. I stepped inside, each footstep echoing unnaturally across the empty floor. The lobby was small, abandoned, and dusty, yet it smelled faintly of coffee, warm and bitter. Odd, considering there was no one there. A vending machine rattled, though nothing had touched it. My pulse quickened. Then I saw it. A figure, hunched near the far wall, motionless, tall, too still to be human. Its head tilted slowly, as if examining me. I realized, almost immediately, that this truck stop was not on any map for a reason. It shouldn't exist. I froze, every nerve screaming at me to turn and run, but exhaustion and curiosity rooted me to the spot. The figure didn't move. Its head tilted slowly, studying me, and I could feel a presence, cold, heavy, and oppressive, pressing against my chest. I inched closer, forcing my eyes to adjust to the dim light. The lobby was far smaller than it had appeared from outside, almost impossibly cramped, the walls seemingly closing in. The vending machine rattled again, this time with more force, as if something unseen was tapping against it. A low hum started to fill the room, barely audible at first, then growing steadily. It sounded mechanical but distorted, unnatural. My pulse raced. The figure began to shift, slowly, with movements too fluid, too deliberate to be human. Every step it took seemed to leave a shadow lingering behind, like darkness itself was crawling toward me. I realized, with chilling certainty, that I was not alone. I stumbled backward, heart hammering, trying to find an exit. But the room seemed impossibly elongated, walls stretching farther than they should. My breaths came in short, ragged gasps, forming small clouds in the icy air. The figure didn't move quickly, but every inch it advanced felt deliberate. Deliberate in a way that made my skin crawl. The hum in the background grew louder, reverberating through the walls, through the floor, through my very bones. I forced myself to speak. I don't want any trouble. No response. Only the cold, still air pressing against me, and the faint metallic scent of something sharp, something alive. Then it tilted its head again, the dim light glinting off a face that was impossibly pale, impossibly still, and that faint, unnatural smile stretched across it, slow and deliberate, like it was savoring my fear. I realized I was trapped, with no choice but to face whatever this impossible place had waiting for me. I tried to back toward the door, but the floor seemed to stretch beneath me, shadows twisting and crawling in ways that didn't make sense. My pulse thundered in my ears, my hands shaking as I gripped the icy counter for support. The figure moved again, gliding forward with a terrifying grace. Each step made the air colder, heavier, like I was breathing in fear itself. My mind raced, trying to find a logical explanation, but there was none. A faint scratching sound started behind me, soft at first, then louder, as if something, or someone, was moving just out of sight. My stomach turned. The room seemed alive, pulsating with intent, every shadow stretching closer, reaching toward me. I finally found my voice, shaky but desperate. Who's there? What do you want?" The figure paused, head tilting slowly, that unnatural smile widening, stretching impossibly across its pale, featureless face. It didn't answer. It didn't need to. Fear itself was its language. I spun toward the door again, desperate for escape, but the handle wouldn't budge. It was as if the building itself had claimed me, folding space and air into something unnatural. My heart pounded. Every nerve screamed that I should run, yet my legs felt like stone. The figure advanced slowly, gliding across the icy floor without a sound, its pale features faintly illuminated by the flickering neon above. The metallic scent of something sharp grew stronger, burning my lungs. I stumbled backward, nearly falling over a toppled chair, and finally slammed into the wall. My back pressed against cold, hard plaster, and I realized there was nowhere to go. The figure tilted its head again, that same grotesque smile stretching wider. Then it whispered. No, not a whisper. A vibration felt through the air itself. Something that made my blood run cold. I understood in an instant this place was alive, and it had chosen me. I finally tore my eyes away from the figure and lunged at the door, yanking with all my strength. It swung open, letting the icy night air rush in, and I bolted out into the snow-covered lot, heart hammering in my chest. The truck sat waiting, its engine still warm. I jumped in, slammed the door, and started it without thinking, tires spinning on ice as I tore down the highway. For a moment, I felt relief. The rest stop receded behind me, dark and silent, like it had never existed. But then, in the rearview mirror, I saw it, standing at the edge of the lot, motionless, watching. I pressed harder on the accelerator, my knuckles white. My pulse thundered as I realized the figure wasn't just part of the building. It followed me in some way, tethered to me, waiting for the next moment of weakness. I didn't dare slow down. Some things don't need to chase you. They just linger. The highway stretched endlessly before me, dim snowflakes drifting past under the weak glow of my headlights. I tried to focus, telling myself that distance would protect me. But the air inside the cab felt suffocating, charged with something unseen. Then I felt it. Not behind me, not visible, but pressing against the truck, a cold, heavy weight that made my chest tighten. I glanced at the passenger seat. empty, and yet wrong. A chill ran through me, unnatural and alive, like the figure had seeped into the very air around me. I gripped the wheel tighter, forcing my eyes to the road, every instinct screaming that I was being watched in ways I couldn't perceive. Trees along the roadside seemed to twist, shadows stretching impossibly, mirroring the figure's presence in the lot I'd left behind. The town lights ahead offered hope, but deep down, I knew the rest stopped, and the figure that haunted it was patient. Patient things never forgive, and patient things never forget. I approached the edge of town, headlights cutting through the snow-dusted streets. My mind was numb, every instinct screaming that something was wrong, that the figure from the truck stop hadn't truly stayed behind. I dared a glance in the rearview mirror. Empty, quiet, too quiet. But the memory of that grotesque smile, pale and impossibly long, haunted me. The scraping, shifting sounds, the unnatural stretching shadows inside the rest stop, they were burned into my mind. I slowed down, trying to convince myself that leaving the building behind was enough. But the sense of being watched didn't fade. It pressed against me, invisible yet tangible, like a weight pressing from the passenger seat. I realized with terror that the figure didn't need to chase. It followed in ways beyond understanding, in ways that could never be escaped. Some things, some places, leave marks you can never wash off. And some horrors linger forever, in memory, in air, in silence. By the time I reached the truck stop, I knew and trusted. Sunlight spilling weakly across the snow, I felt hollowed out. The familiar building looked normal, mundane, but I couldn't shake the weight of what I had experienced. I parked, hands trembling, and stepped inside. Everything seemed ordinary, yet my mind kept replaying the lobby, the distorted shadows, the humanoid figure gliding silently, smiling. Even now, hours later, I could feel its presence pressing against the truck, a lingering echo of the impossible night. I never returned to that stretch of highway again. And I warn every driver I meet, if you see a truck stop where none should exist, don't stop. Don't even glance at it. Because some places, some figures, are patient. And some are hungry. Some horrors follow long after the road has ended. My name is Rachel Myers, and I've been a long-haul trucker for the past 8 years. But nothing in that time prepared me for the nightmare that unfolded one frigid night on Route 89 in northern Canada. I had been driving for nearly 10 hours, the highway stretching endlessly ahead, snow falling in heavy, silent sheets. Fatigue weighed on me like a physical force. That's when I saw it. A small truck stop glowing faintly in the distance, its neon sign flickering weakly. Something about it felt off. Too still, too quiet. No other trucks, no lights in the parking lot besides the broken neon above. My gut told me to keep driving, but exhaustion pulled me in. I parked cautiously, boots crunching on the icy asphalt, the forest pressing in on all sides. The air felt unnaturally cold, biting and heavy, as if warning me to stay away. The building seemed abandoned, yet I could feel it watching me. I approached the entrance slowly, fingers hovering over the door handle. The wind was eerily still, carrying no sound except the faint whistle of distant trees. I called out, hoping for some sign of life, but the building remained silent. The windows were grimy, opaque with years of neglect, and yet I sensed a presence inside. Something, or someone, was moving just out of sight, deliberate and patient. I stepped inside, boots scraping against the icy, dust-covered floor. The lobby smelled faintly of stale coffee and rust, the remnants of life that no longer existed. A vending machine rattled, though nothing had touched it, and the faint hum of electricity from the broken neon above added to the oppressive atmosphere. Then I saw it. A figure crouched in the far corner, motionless. Tall, thin, impossibly still, its head tilting as if studying me. A faint, unnatural smile stretched across its pale face, the kind that freezes your blood in an instant. My heart hammered as I took a cautious step forward, every instinct screaming to run. The figure didn't move. It just watched, head tilting slowly, smile stretching impossibly across its pale, featureless face. The air felt heavier, pressing down on me like an invisible weight. I tried to steady my breathing, convincing myself it was exhaustion, fatigue twisting reality. But the metallic scent of something sharp, something alive, filled the lobby, curling in my nose, making me gag. The vending machine rattled again, louder this time, as if testing my courage. I took another step. The figure mirrored me, gliding forward with unnatural grace. Shadows stretched along the walls in impossible angles, curling toward me, reaching for me. My stomach churned, and I stumbled backward, barely catching myself on the icy counter. It smiled wider, slow and deliberate, savoring my fear. I realized then that this was no ordinary haunting. The truck stop itself was alive, and I was trapped within its grip. I forced myself to speak, voice trembling. I don't want any trouble. Please. The air seemed to thicken in response, vibrating slightly, carrying a whisper of words I couldn't comprehend. The figure tilted its head again. Slow, deliberate, the faint glow of the broken neon lights reflecting off its grotesque features. The lobby felt impossibly long, walls stretching beyond reason, shadows crawling toward me like living tendrils. A scraping sound started behind me. Low, deliberate, closer than it should have been. My pulse leapt into my throat. Every instinct screamed that this wasn't just a figure. It was something patient, calculating, something that didn't need to move to terrify me. I stumbled toward the door, desperate to escape, but the handle felt frozen, as if fused to the wall itself. The figure advanced slightly, each movement fluid, impossible, suffused with a cold, metallic scent that made my stomach twist. I understood, in that instant, that the truck stop had claimed me. I spun toward the door again, heart hammering, but it refused to budge. My hands trembled as I pulled and yanked, the icy metal frozen as if the building itself didn't want me to leave. My pulse raced. The air was heavy, suffocating, charged with something unseen. The figure glided closer, slow, deliberate, a nightmare wrapped in shadows. Its pale, featureless face reflected the flickering neon, grotesque and smiling, savoring every moment of my terror. My stomach churned, the metallic scent growing stronger, suffocating me with its unnatural presence. I stumbled over a fallen chair, my boots slipping on the icy floor, and pressed myself against the wall. The scraping sound came again, louder, echoing unnaturally, moving around me as if it were alive. Then the figure tilted its head toward me, and I understood. This place was not just abandoned. It was hungry, and I was its chosen prey. I finally tore my eyes away and lunged toward a window, desperate for any exit. The glass rattled under my fingers, cold and unyielding. I turned back just in time to see the figure gliding silently across the lobby, shadows stretching unnaturally along the walls. The air inside the room was impossibly cold, almost alive, pressing down on my lungs. Every instinct screamed to run, yet my legs felt like stone. My voice caught in my throat as I whispered a futile plea, hoping it might respond, or worse, be distracted. It tilted its head again, the faint smile wider, deliberate, Then it spoke, or at least the vibrations in the air carried words my mind couldn't process. I felt them in my bones, resonating, chilling, commanding. I realized then that I wasn't just inside a haunted building. I was trapped inside a living nightmare, and it had all the time in the world. With a surge of desperation, I yanked the door open and bolted into the snowy lot, heart hammering in my chest. My boots sank into the icy snow, and the wind whipped around me, but I didn't look back. Until I caught a glimpse in the rearview mirror. The figure stood at the edge of the lot, impossibly still, pale face faintly illuminated by the broken neon. Its grotesque smile lingered in my mind like a clawed memory, watching, waiting, patient. I jumped into the truck, slamming the door, and the engine roared to life. Tires spun on the icy asphalt as I tore down the highway, adrenaline fueling every desperate movement. For a brief moment, I thought I had escaped. But a suffocating cold filled the cab, a pressure on my chest that made it hard to breathe. The figure didn't chase. It simply followed, tethered to me in ways I couldn't comprehend, an invisible presence that refused to release me. The highway stretched endlessly, snowflakes drifting past under my headlights like shards of glass. I tried to focus on the road, to convince myself that I had left the figure behind, but the cab felt suffocating, charged with an invisible presence. I dared a glance at the passenger seat, empty, and yet wrong. A cold, unnatural chill emanated from it, like the figure had seeped into the very air around me. My knuckles whitened on the wheel as terror clawed at my mind. The shadows of the trees lining the road twisted and stretched, echoing the movements of the figure back at the truck stop. Every mile, every heartbeat reminded me that the place was alive, patient, watching. The faint glow of town lights ahead offered fragile hope, but deep down, I knew the rest stop, and whatever lingered there was not finished with me. And patient things never forgive, and patient things never forget. I finally reached the outskirts of town, headlights illuminating the empty streets ahead. My body was numb with exhaustion, my mind replaying every detail of the truck stop. The pale figure, the impossible shadows, the oppressive air. I dared a glance in the rearview mirror. Nothing. Empty. Too empty. Yet I could feel it. The lingering presence pressed against me, invisible but undeniable, chilling the air inside the cab. My pulse raced as the memory of that grotesque smile, the unnatural movements, and the scraping sounds echoed in my mind. I slowed to a crawl, forcing myself to stay alert. The road felt longer than ever, shadows along the roadside stretching in impossible ways, echoing the horrors I'd left behind. Some things don't need to chase. They follow in ways beyond comprehension, tethered to your fear, patient, waiting. And I understood, with bone-deep certainty, that the truck stop was not just a place. It was a predator. By the time I parked at a familiar, well-lit truck stop, the first weak light of dawn spilling over the snow, I felt hollowed out. The building looked ordinary, mundane, but my mind couldn't shake the weight of what I had experienced. Every detail of the Route 89 stop replayed in my memory. The elongated lobby, the crawling shadows, the figure gliding silently with its grotesque, unnatural smile. Even hours later, I could feel its presence in the cab, pressing against me like a phantom. I never returned to that stretch of highway. And I warn every driver I meet, if you see a truck stop where none should exist, don't stop. Don't even glance at it. Some places are alive, some watch, and some follow long after the road has ended.